Hello, this meeting is going to focus on assessing the important affective or non-cognitive aspects of reading. Much of this meeting is going to be taken from Peter Afflerbach's book called Understanding and Using Reading Assessment, and it's for K through 12. First, we're going to define what affective assessments are. The affective domain includes essential factors that contribute to reading success. These factors are able to be assessed as outcomes. They are sometimes referred to as the other assessments. More often, they're referred to as non-cognitive assessments. We're going to take a look at the rare affective assessments. These assessments are not often utilized. Affective assessments in reading instruction and assessment are not really the focus at this time, especially when we consider No Child Left Behind, our current curriculum guides, current reading programs, state standards, and high-stakes testing focus. All of these leave little time for assessing much else. Currently, of course, the focus of assessment is on cognitive skills and strategy development. And there is a lack of concentration on assessing affective assessments. This challenge pinpoints the fact that teachers and students are already overwhelmed with the current burden of assessment. The dual challenge entails promoting and including affective assessments in an already inundated reading assessment program. Why then should teachers and reading specialists and special education teachers entertain the notion of further assessing in this non-cognitive domain? It is simply because the non-cognitive or affective domain does have a heavy influence on whether or not students are going to read, and it sheds light on why they do not read. Weaker readers may choose not to read as they leave school and live their lives. This dismissal of reading may be explained only in part by the failure to learn to read. For the most part, aversion to reading may be attributed to being unaware of the merit of reading. According to Afflerbach, reluctance in reading can be addressed and countered in the affective domain. The reluctant reader who is motivated to agree to read in school and then elects to read outside of the classroom demonstrates a possibly life-enhancing change, and this change could be assessed and described. So what qualifies as affective? Motivation, self-concept, attitudes, interests, and attributions. These qualify as the affective assessments because, number one, they are not cognitive assessments. They don't evaluate skill or knowledge. Instead, they assess non-cognitive aspects of reading. And two, there are marked differences demonstrated in these areas between established and weaker readers. We're going to take a look at each one of these assessment types. In order for readers to experience success, they must be motivated, of a positive attitude, of good self-concept, and capable of making accurate attributions for their performances. Since this is a true statement from Afflerbach's book on assessment, it makes sense to pay attention and assess the affective assessments. Motivation to read indicates that students read to support and enhance expanding interests. Motivation includes reading despite challenging or somewhat difficult material. The reader's self-concept refers to how readers perceive themselves as they read. This perception influences what is read and how often students read. Reader attitudes can enhance or inhibit reading from the start. This may influence whether or not reading is extended beyond school hours as an enjoyable activity, or if it is viewed as a chore. Reader interest may open the door for a reluctant reader by pursuing reading which focuses on a desired topic. Oftentimes, readers realize new interests through reading. Reader attributions represent the reasoning students give for their success or failure in reading. Resources for each of these affective assessments are located in our assessment module in case you wish to include any of them in your case study assignment or in the discussion board post. We can take a look at each assessment, which may help you decide on which one to include in your case study. If you do include an affective assessment, please be sure to also include the cognitive assessment types as well. In the past, I have had students use these affective assessments with very rewarding results. Of course, depending on the age and grade of your student, adaptations are welcome. All right, we'll take a look at the motivation to read profile, which consists of two parts, and that's overlapping a little bit, but it says self-report reading survey and the individual interview. The survey is administered to a whole group, and it assesses the value placed on reading. Then the interview section is administered individually, and it explores individual aspects of students' motivation to read, such as personal interests. An example of questions taken from the motivation to read profile, or the MRP, are the following. Reading a book is something I like to do. And then the student answers with never, not very often, sometimes, or often. Another statement that they can respond to that is included in the MRP is, I tell my friends about good books that I read. I never do this. I almost never do this. I sometimes do this. I do this a lot. So they can answer different questions on a scale, and then the interview is a little bit more individual. Information derived from the MRP can be used to plan instructional activities or suggest reading materials that will support students in their reading development. Then we have the reading self-concept scale, and this asks students questions that ascertain how they see themselves as readers and how they interpret others perceive them as readers. Many weak readers acquire low self-concepts from the steady negative messages that they gather about the nature of their low-level reading performances. Even better readers may have fragile self-concepts because of the demands that they put on themselves to perform. An example question from the RSCS follows. Along the competence scale, can you work out hard words by yourself when you read? Are you good at remembering words? From the attitude scale, do you look forward to reading? And the difficulty scale, do you make lots of mistakes in reading? Are the books you read in class too hard? The student answers these questions, and then they answer additional questions using a scale that consists of these responses. Strongly agree, agree, undecided, disagree, and strongly disagree. A question that determines how the reader sees himself is, I think I am a good reader, to which they would answer according to the scale. A question that determines how the reader feels others see him as a reader is, I can tell my teacher likes to listen to me read. Self-perception is how you feel about yourself, but it's also influenced by the way you think other people view you. So that's why they have questions that assess both those areas. Next, we have the Elementary Reading Attitude Survey. Readers with positive attitudes expect to find reading rewarding and assume that they will be successful. They anticipate being able to overcome challenges, and in contrast, students with a history of failure in reading are often further hindered by poor attitudes toward reading. There are versions of this test that use a smiley face, but we're going to look at the Garfield version. The Elementary Reading Attitude Survey elicits responses concerning attitudes regarding recreational and academic reading. Students circle the appropriate Garfield cat that characterizes their feelings toward reading. And we have two questions from the ERAS. How do you feel about spending free time reading a book? And how do you feel about starting a new book? This is a great assessment for young readers. There is one question that sometimes doesn't deliver valid responses. It's how do you feel about reading a book on a rainy day? And if students don't quite understand, they'll circle the frown kitty because they don't like a rainy day as opposed to reading a book on a rainy day. Then we have the Reading Interest Survey. Knowing and using students' interest in planning and implementing curriculum can have a positive effect on student reading. Now, I supply one of these in the resources for our reading assessment module, but if you Google reading interest surveys, you can find them for different age groups, from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. Even for pre-K, you could read the survey to the student and mark down their responses. So if you don't like the one that's included, again, you can make adaptations, and for some of them, you can find different leveled assessments. The Reading Interest Survey is an interest inventory, and it determines reading interests and reading habits. And then, of course, results can guide instruction and help to create individual book lists. Here are a few questions from the Reading Interest Survey. Do you like to read? How much time do you spend reading? What are some of the books that you have read lately? Do you have a library card? How often do you use it? And do you ever get books from the school library? The library card question used to be more valid, I feel, than it is now, because a lot of times having a library card or not having a library card doesn't really indicate if you are an avid reader as much as it used to, because of Nook and Kindle and the way we can all access books digitally now. And about how many books do you own? Some reading interest surveys also ask students about favorite television shows and favorite movies and favorite authors, again, to help the teacher to be able to encourage a reading list for the child. And then we have one more, and it's the reading attributions. Students can attribute reading performance to external factors such as luck or difficulty, and they can attribute reading performance to internal factors such as a level of effort or intelligence. Depending on what they choose, it can have a very powerful effect, not just on their present, but also on their future. Each attribution has the potential to become a habitual way of thinking about oneself in relation to reading and reading success or failure. Some of you work with adult readers, and you will find that this is the case. One attribution is not smart enough. Students may determine that because they are not smart enough, they experience weak reading performances. They may feel that their performance will always manifest itself the same way in current reading assignments as well as future reading tasks. It's apparent that attributions of readers are very powerful. It so happens that readers with these attributions seldom change their perceptions throughout their lifetimes. Not being smart enough, for example, is perceived by most as a permanent condition with no hope of improvement. Therefore, the student who chooses to avoid reading at all costs or resigns himself to failure. The way to assess attributions is a bit more complicated. We need to ask questions. Specific questions can shed light on students' attributions concerning their reading performances. Attributions may be consistent or could be dependent upon the subject or topic. A student that I'm working with right now reads avidly at home, and as long as the material is of their interest, they are having great results with comprehension, but the student realizes that that's not the case when it's assigned reading for a school subject that they may not be interested in. Then they need to employ various strategies to keep themselves on task, monitor their own comprehension. And it's a whole different type of skill set. So questions to determine reading attributions. Why do you think you performed this way? Why do you think you got this grade? Why do you think you understood this chapter? And do you feel that you will be more successful with certain reading tasks? Which ones and why? So we can ask these questions, and hopefully the students' answers will shed light on whether or not they're attributing their reading success or failure to effort, determination, or if it's just all on the teacher's shoulders. Well, it's the teacher's fault, or it was luck. I'm just not a lucky person, so I don't do well with reading tests or exams. Afflerbach links outside and inside influences to attributions. Some students make incorrect attributions for reading success or failure. They feel that they have no control over the act of reading, and therefore accomplishment or failure in reading is believed to be due to outside influences, including luck and difficulty level. Effective students correctly attribute success or failure in reading to effort, perseverance, and hard work. These students, when faced with challenge, don't feel hopeless or out of control. And that should probably read effective students, effective reading students. I probably was writing affective so much that I inadvertently put that in there. Teachers are the key. Afflerbach, in his book, Understanding and Using Reading Assessment, explains how difficult it is for student attributions to change, and that is where teachers come in. Students can change incorrect attributions through retraining. Teachers can model associating effort and hard work with results and progress in reading. And they can do this through specific praise and through modeling. And this is a great note on which to end the session, because as teachers, reading specialists, special education teachers, we can change students' attributions. And in doing so, we can change their lives for the better. We can refocus and replace those habits where the student is feeling like everything is out of their control, it's the luck of the draw, and we can replace that, help them to replace that with more positive attributions such as hard work and determination. It's true that some of our students are going to have to work harder than others to comprehend what they read. It's true that some of our students are going to have to put in longer hours and more time, but they can still get the results in doing that. And that can change how they view things. They can realize that if they put in the hard work and they put in the effort, then they still can get results. So be sure to access the other meetings on Dibbles and Ocella and the QRI-5. Those are all cognitive assessments. The Dibbles and Ocella are in one meeting, and then the QRI-5 is going to be in a separate meeting. That's going to be like an overview. You can assess those, and you can then pick and choose which assessment types you would like to put in with your case study. Thank you, and make sure to access all of those reading assessment module resources and also the meetings as well.